Hey there everybody, this is the assembly video for the year clock. First off, we're going to start by building the gearbox. So, you're going to take the gearbox base and the medium-sized gear. Make sure it's the one that has the little circular cutout on it. It should snap right into place. Second step is going to be to take your gearbox assembly, flip it over, and then take your clock hand mechanism and motor. Make sure the battery's in all the way before you put this on. It should fit perfectly in here and slide all the way through that hole. Next step is going to be taking the nut that came with your clock motor and screw it in by any means necessary. I just used the small Allen wrench that came with the Prusa Mark III. You might not have it, so use whatever you can find. Make sure it's nice and snug in there. This is what's going to hold your clock mechanism in. Step 3. Take the biggest gear that you have. It should have a circular cutout as well. And the second medium gear. It should look like that. Then position them like this and snap it on. It's a snap fit, so it shouldn't come undone, but the gears should still rotate freely. To position these, make sure this little knob right here goes into this hole. They should slide in, and if you give them a little bit of a spin, they should spin pretty freely. Next, take the smallest gear that you can find. It should have a hole in it, and some super glue. Take the super glue, put it in the hole, and then attach it to the clock motor. It should slide on quite nicely around that big gear. You may have to push it on and hold it there for a few seconds just to make sure the glue is dry. To test it, wiggle around the big gear once the glue is dry. It should not spin. Next, take the smallest gear, make sure it doesn't have a groove, and put it in its position right here. Then take this gear and set it in this groove on the first gear that you placed. Alright, now we're on to assembling the lid of the clock. You're going to take your clock arm, I printed it in a light ASA, and your smallest gear. This one should have a groove so the clock arm can fit in it. And finally, the lid. What you'll do is take your smallest gear, put it through the hole in the lid, make sure it goes all the way through, and then attach the clock arm onto the little gear. It should snap into place, and if you go to spin, it should spin pretty freely. Okay, now we take the entire gearbox assembly and we set the lid on top of it. Now you'll notice that there is a gap right here between the lid and the bottom of the gearbox. To fix this, give it a quick little shake, and it should shrink down to something around this size. To get rid of this, there are a few ways that you can do it. One way that always works for me is to tip it upside down, shake it a little bit. This didn't work this time. Another way you can do this is to wiggle around the gears up and down to try and get them into their slots. Tipping it upside down and wiggling bits around can also help. As you can see, I am having a little bit of trouble with it, but usually I get it on the first or second try. You can also use the little Allen wrench and poke at little bits to try and move those into their holes. Once you get it, it should look something like this, and make sure this is perfectly flush with the bottom of the gearbox. Okay, this is done. Now we can move on to assembling the calendar itself. This is probably the most important part of the entire clock because it shows you what day it is. Now you're going to need all 12 calendar pieces, starting with January, and working your way around clockwise. So the next piece would then be February, then March, April, May, etc., etc. And finally finishing with December. Okay, now take out two pieces. I chose January and February because they were the easiest ones to get out. And what we're going to do now is glue them together. They are put together like this. It's just a little sliding joint. And to help align them better, you can use one of these snap pegs. I printed mine in PETG, just so then it lasts a long time. You only need one, but I got 4 just so I can do multiple pieces at once. Put it through this hole right here in the top left corner of each piece of the year slices, and then this peg needs to line up with the small hole on the January piece, like so. This is so that it holds it in place better while you're gluing it, and it won't, completely slip out of place. Next, take your super glue and put it on either the back side of one piece, as shown here, or on the front side of another. You don't have to do both, otherwise the glue might spill out. But don't cover this hole right here, because that is where the peg will stay, and you don't want to glue these pegs in. That defeats the purpose of the snap fit. Finally, assemble the month slices like this. Press firmly to cure the glue faster. And align the top piece. Make sure it doesn't slide too far up or too far down. After you complete one, repeat it for all the rest. Once you've completed every single month slice, take your gearbox and set it in the center. If you don't know where to put it, get out your handy-dandy alignment tool. Each one of these notches lines up with the 20th of December, November, and October. This line and this line are at 90-degree angles. You're going to line up the vertical line with the crack between December and January. Take note the horizontal line will not line up with the crack between September and October. To move this from March all the way down to June, or whatever month it may be, all that you have to do is simply lift up the lid, turn the clock arm, approximate it, get it as close as you can to the actual date, and then set the lid down. Then, to move and seal up the box, put some tape on the arm so it doesn't move when you're fiddling with it. This is so that it stays at the right date, no matter what happens to the box. Then, tip it upside down, shake it around, mess with the gears, do whatever you did before. After a few minutes, it should seal itself up, and then place it back right where it was. What you can do now is hang it up on a wall somewhere, or alternatively, like I did here, for demo purposes only, I pulled off the tape. This is what you'll do at the last step once you get everything else hung up and fully assembled. This is to ensure that the date stays correct no matter what happens. Now the clock arm can move freely, and you can pull off the alignment tool, because that just looks ugly and you don't want that hanging on your wall. For the final step, this is completely optional where you put every one of these. These are the snap fit pins and their little toppers. If there isn't one that you want, or if you can't find one that fits your needs, let me know and I will try and make one as soon as possible and post it. Thank you all for following this video tutorial, and I hope you enjoyed building the year clock. Thank you very much.